Hi, everybody. Welcome to the show. I've got the fantastic Jeff Lippman with me today. I listened to a lot of his podcasts on Doom Garden, which I think is just a brilliant title for podcast. Jeff, welcome aboard.
Well, thank you very much for having me. It's actually Garden of Doom,
Oh, that's
but Doom Garden would be good as well. But yeah, it's Garden of Doom. But I thank you. I appreciate that you listened in the past, and I hope that some of your viewers will consider listening as well. But I'm happy to be here.
Oh, wonderful. Thank you. I'm going to sort of just throw a question at you because we both uh, go to the Nephilim Anthropology Conference that's run every
Mhm.
year, or when David can run it. So I just wanted to ask you, do the Nephilim walk amongst us today? What do you think on that?
I think that it's entirely possible that there is Nephilim blood running in people. The question as to who the Nephilim are is a question that's very controversial. I've heard a lot of different interpretations, but I've sort of settled on mine. The origin, whether it's divine or extraterrestrial or extra dimensional, that I can't settle to anyone's success. But when you look at all comparative, well, not all, but practically every comparative mythology and origin story, they all have some things that are similar, and almost all of them have some sort of uh, being coming from the sky and breeding with humans to create demigods. Um, Now, some interpretations are these all became giants, and that's why the flood was created and all the giants were eliminated. But even if we accept that interpretation, which I do not, we know that all the giants were not exterminated, or at least not all in the Nephilim weren't, because we have Goliath, we have Og of Bashan, we had the Rephaim, we had, I think, the Anakim. So there were the Gaborim, there were giants, or at least part giants, that did survive the flood. So even if you accept that it was the Nephilim that caused that, now I don't really get where people come from that it was the Nephilim that were the cause of the flood. It seems that God was displeased with man, not necessarily the angels, and there's all sorts of versions. Which I mean, I don't know. I think biblical interpretations sort of have morphed into people's ideologies further from what the actual words say. I mean, God made man in his image. Well, now we have angels in God's image. Well, no. I mean, if God made the angels in his image, the man want them in his favored creature. He made man in his image. So the angels looked like something else. Even that, uh, you know, doesn't make entire sense. But anyway, I gave you a very long answer to a short question. Yes, I think that there may in fact be Nephilim still amongst us, but if not, certainly their ancestors. And whether it's 6,000 years or 100,000 years ago, whatever it is, with all the intermixing and the begetting and the begatting that's been had, who knows how many of us have some of that in us.
Yeah, I must have. I've seen some people walk down the street, and I can say they've definitely got Neanderthal blood in them, or they have the Neanderthal foreheads. And I see people that look, a little bit like fairy people. So, we're all a mixture, aren't we? Over the many millennium that all us different species have been on the planet, there might not be any actual pure bloods left.
We sure are. If there was actually like it's probably a pretty good business idea. Trademark and patent pending and copyright asserted that it would do a paranormal ancestry DNA and figure out what kind of Nephilim and Denisovin and Neanderthal and Homo naledi and whatever, Homo florenzius portions we have, as well as 12% Romanian, 10% Irish, 2% Benin, whatever you normally get.
That's a brilliant idea. Let's start it. I'm in on that business.
I'm in. All we need is seed capital that doesn't want to exercise too much control. But yeah, I think we can make a go of that.
Well, my last name, Elliot, the way it's spelt means king of the little people. And I'm quite a little
Oh,
person anyway. So, but I've always had people say, oh, it's definitely the fairy folk. You've definitely got fairy blood in you and things.
well, could be. I mean, the my understanding of the fairy folk is that it's not just the little people. It's sort of a derivative of the fae folk, which fairies have come to, we think of like Tinkerbell, but fairies came in all shapes and sizes, including giant and human size. But fairies were all mythological creatures, sort of in the Celtic Nordic tradition, including trolls and ogres, and so I wouldn't sleep on the fairies, or being called the queen of the little people, but they have found actual hobbit people that were that coexisted with Homo sapiens, which means within the last 200,000 years. So yeah, you may well have been the queen of those. They were mostly in the South Pacific, as we know now, or Oceania, Oceania. Um, but that just means that we haven't discovered the bones anywhere else.
Yeah, well, the Lord of the Rings kind of seems to be coming true, doesn't it? Not necessarily the storyline, but all the different types of beings, let's say, all live together in one supposedly happy world. But
Well, Tolkien came from your part of the world, and borrowed a lot from Norse mythology, and a lot of Norse mythology was translated to and used by Celtic mythologies, and some were joined and some built upon each other. And I find it a little bit offensive that people think that folks in the past didn't have imaginations. Like, all of a sudden we're the only ones who can like make stories like Star Wars and Lord of the Rings and whatever. I mean, I think it's a little bit insulting to think that everybody wrote down these stories and thought they were literally the truth and the facts, that none of them, that none of it is fiction, not even fan fiction, just fiction, that people with imaginations scroll down. So I don't want to diminish that either, but I do think when there's such commonality, cross cultures, cross borders, cross continents, that there's some commonality to it. Now, whether it's because that's the story that was first arrived to at the biggest tribe in the middle of the Serengeti, 104,000 years ago, and that spread everywhere else, or the biggest, clan, somewhere in the Eurasian steppe, and that sort of spread all over. Or my preferred is that there's actually something to it.
yeah, I'm with you. I prefer that there's something to it, though. I do wonder if perhaps all these other beings, let's say, they've just sort of disappeared into other dimensions or realms. For example, they talk about the Tuatha De Danann, the fairy folk of the, if they were fairy folk, or the elementals, or whatever they were, that they went underground. And I know they talk about a lot of this of other beings that were slightly different to us humans. So do you think that might have been with the, like, say, for example, the giants and the Nephilim? They just went off to another dimension, or found another way to get out of our phase of living. Maybe we're too dense to see them.
I'd say it's entirely possible. I mean, for one, going underground could just be how you explain that something disappeared. I mean, there's two ways: you go underground. Well, I guess three: you go underground, you go underwater, or you ascend into the heavens above the firmament. I mean, those are the three ways. I mean, all those can be explained by other things besides living underground, or actually going to root. I mean, that there, we haven't explored most of the sea, and probably will never have the technology to do so. If it was aliens, great, but I don't like dimensions, so extra dimensions only because it gives me a headache, not because I don't believe in it. I don't like British science fiction for the same reason, but you're British, so you probably do.
No, I'm not
But
into sci-fi, but yeah, carry on, please.
quantum mechanics and quantum physics and astrophysics believe that there's other dimensions. And I spoke to George Mitrovic recently, who's become a friend in a short period of time, and he has, between him and Robert Temple, they inform me that there's a fourth state of matter called plasma. Robert Temple says that's what dark matter is, and lo and behold, I looked it up, and it looks like that's what the prevailing scientific view is that there is a fourth state of matter called plasma. Well, George Mitrovic has posited that there's a fifth state, which he calls a quasar vacuum. But basically, as I understand it, and everyone who's listening, please put that in bold caps, underline it 3 times, as I understand it. Someone who does not have a degree in science or even a particular aptitude for it, but as I understand how he described it to me, that basically it sort of answers Schrodinger's cat, that the quasar vacuum is actually a portal, an entrance to another dimension, that basically two things are existing in the same time, but in two different places. And he also posits that that's a possible explanation for everything, that between how the human mind processes. It could be that there are other beings on that side that look certain ways, but it could also be that that your brain protects you, and so you see something, you understand that if you're a woodsman, maybe you see Bigfoot. If you're very religious, maybe you see the Virgin Mary or an angel. Um, anyway, it's probably best to ask him this, and he probably would talk to you about it. I don't see why he wouldn't. He's very generous that way. But that's sort of my understanding, that there's portals, and I believe that you can jump to and fro if you know how to do it. This is semi-related, but a semi-tangent. I was listening to a podcast where people were talking about the unlikelihood that aliens or advanced technologies would just, leave crashed vehicles here. They said it's not like they're leaving Chevy Novas, which to the non-American audience or non-American car audience is a very old version of a Chevy car, which was a cheap car even then, and now would be worth less than a chair in your house, possibly, probably, if you could find one. And I was thinking, well, how do you know that? Maybe these are the Chevy Novas, or these are the training bicycles that they have their kids ride. Maybe these are the tricycles or the big wheels, or maybe these are the test cars. Maybe this is how they have their teenagers learn to drive through intergalactic. I mean, how do you know it's not their equivalent of Chevy Novas? If they're 10,000 years ahead of us or a million years ahead of us, maybe this is their space junk, because their real stuff is so far beyond we can't imagine it. So but anyway, that was just like I said, a little semi-related aside.
I like that. I've never thought of it like that before, because I've always kind of come from the fact of Tesla making his ray that could stop all electrical engines and things, and that the CIA or whoever have stolen that, and then that was how they managed to start taking out flying saucers or UFOs. But I like this. Yeah, maybe it's all just those having their driving lessons.
Yeah, Tesla has sort of become the hero of the sort of the alternative community, and in fact, maybe, I mean, he was a brilliant man and had all these inventions and patents, and yes, some of them were inconveniently sort of taken, and maybe they are using whoever they is, for their various purposes or whatever that is. However, if that was the case, I would think that we wouldn't be afraid so much of Chinese hypersonic missiles.
Okay, yeah, but then they'd have to announce that they do have that technology, wouldn't they? And maybe they don't want to
Well,
admit.
that's true. Maybe it's explaining why we're not building, 4 more carriers and trying to get 12 more nuclear submarines out there. But then again, I mean, the U.S. Navy just announced that 40% of the submarines are, in dry dock, either waiting for docks, waiting for equipment and or people who are qualified to repair them. So 40% of maybe there is the technology, they just don't have the ability to build it. Or like you said, maybe it's just plain possible.
Yeah. I'm glad you brought up Robert Temple. I heard him speak a couple of times last year, and I have over the years, but especially about his new book, about plasma, because that was quite a mind-blowing talk when I first heard him speak about it. I did try and read the book. I found it a bit difficult, but the more I read or the more I hear him talk about it, it's beginning to make sense, because he's talking about plasma being conscious, isn't he? And that
Actually, he has identified one of them as being Metatron.
yes. Oh, again, at first I didn't really understand what he was saying. Obviously, I know who Metatron is, and for those that don't know, that was Enoch, wasn't it, when he got transcended up from the heavens after going on his trip?
That's what most people say, but his version is that Enoch was sort of absorbed into Metatron. So there's elements of Enoch in them, but Enoch did not become Metatron. I don't know if he's right or wrong on that. I don't know if there's any way to prove or disprove it unless Metatron itself announces that to the world. But even if that's complete fiction, if it's just the fact that there is intelligent, like somewhat solid gas out there, and there's 2 of them, like equidistant in Lagrange points between us and the moon, observing, or just the fact that they're out there, even if you don't think they're observing, they are there. is amazing.
Yeah, and he encourages us to connect with them, doesn't he?
Yeah, I don't know how though, but
Yeah, no,
I'm
I
gonna.
didn't quite understand how. I didn't know if it was through meditation or not, but it's like I think quite an encouraging thing of, we should be connecting with whatever is out there, and with if everything's plasma, we should
I'm
we're
going to talk to him again soon. We're going to talk about the properties of the octopus and extraterrestrial, but I will try to get a little clarification on how to communicate with Metatronic. It will probably be, you know, it probably does involve some combination of safe psychedelics and meditation.
Mm. Do you try connecting with anything like the Nephilim or anyone? Is that your the kind of path you go down, or you just research?
No, no, no. I just do read. I'm way too linear for that. Like I said, just thinking about extra dimensions gives me a headache. And uh, while I want to know, I don't want to be the canary in anyone's coal mine. So I'm sort of a coward about everything, except that if Elon Musk or someone like that wants to make me a space magistrate, I will do that.
That's brilliant. What do you think about Elon Musk and the coming AI that he's warning us about and is now making as well?
Okay. I am generally not terrified of technology. I'm not good with technology, but I'm not terrified. Usually, technology creates industries and jobs and opportunities that benefit. I don't see how that's possible with AI. All I can see is it replacing people and jobs
Mm.
from high levels to middle levels to low levels. Um, and I don't know. A lot of times, science fiction tends to be right. I mean, haven't we seen this with iRobot and 2001 and Terminator and Age of Ultron? I mean, if AI confirms the findings, or the algorithm is biased to confirm the findings that humans are creating global warming and destroying the planet, and AI figures it needs to exist on the planet as opposed to uploading itself to the International Space Station or something, um, wouldn't it get rid of the vermin? I mean,
Yes.
it's not like the Anunnaki myth. It doesn't need a slave race, or if it does, I would imagine it would just be just a small colony of basically tech support people until they can make tech support, robots. So, I mean, this is a Black Mirror kind of episode, but yeah, I'm really afraid of AI. I mean, I don't I think that that is going to be calamitous to economies, and there's no way to do anything about it except to outlaw it. But these genies, they once they get out of boxes, they get out of boxes. And the scary thing is I think that the people who are going to be most inclined to welcome it with open arms in the beginning will be the people who suffer for it so the people who got into crypto, not the first ones, but like the second and third waves, they've all lost everything, because it's imaginary money. And if people start adopting that, they will make themselves obsolete. But yeah, I'm terrified of AI.
I do wonder if maybe that was a kind of thing that happened in the past in our ancient civilizations, where it's some kind of technology that went too far, and that's why we've lost perhaps the knowledge or the ancient knowledge, the ancient wisdom, because it wiped out people in like like for
Entirely
example
possible.
Atlantis myth and things like that.
Yeah, the Battlestar Galactica reboot, they said all this has happened before and all this will happen again.
Yeah, and there's no Chinese myth that says the same thing. So yeah,
Sure is.
it's all
Absolutely.
cycles that go round and round. So
That's
we're,
right.
we're gonna run out of time soon. So I just wanted to, do you want to discuss about what your podcast Garden of Doom, I do apologize for Doom Garden, but Garden
It's
of Dooms are all about, and what kind of guests you have on?
Sure. Well, I think the audience has gotten a taste of it already. Garden of Doom is really sort of, I would, you can listen to the first 20 or so episodes if you like. When I had a co-host, it was sort of a different show. And then he left, and then it probably took me like, I don't know, a couple months to sort of figure out the personality of the show and how I want to do things. And then I found out I was good at booking. And so sort of around somewhere in the 20s or the 30s, I started getting like really good guests, like really above my weight class. So It's very varied. It's sort of wherever my curious mind wants to go, and the more I learn, I don't know anything about it, and so I find people tell me that. So guests include a lot of the folks that are part of the Nephilim Anthropology Conference. Gary Wayne's been on twice. Reverend Jim Williamson, David Parry's been on. Alan Cox has been on. Christina
Maria Wheatley.
Maria Wheatley, she's been on. Sorry, um, and Gretchen Cornwell from the Curse of Oak Island about Templars. Uh, Robert Temple, George Mitrovic, Reverend Jim Willis has been on 4 times, coming on a 5th time. Luke Michael Ironside, who knows everything. I swear he's 29 years old, but I'm sure he's 29,000 years old. He's
Isn't he just? Yeah, he writes some incredible articles. Sometimes he writes from Hermes when I had Hermes magazine. But I agree with you. For such a young guy, he seems to understand it all in such a way that I would never have understood at that age, and I still struggle now. So,
don't believe him. If there's a Nephilim, he's a Nephilim, or a vampire, whatever it is. He's immortal. There's no chance that anyone knows that much at that age. It's just not possible. But yet he does. And I've had Andrew Goff's been on several times, but I also have people in geopolitics. Mike Hilliard from the Red Line podcast has been on. Krishnap Anderson from the Eastern Border podcast has been on. I've had the host of the History of Africa on several times, the host of the History of the People of the Russian Empire. So we'll do shows like Who Are the Huns? Who Were the Berbers? Items like that. The host of Our Fake History was on, the host of Earth Ancients, Cliff Dunning, which, I mean, if you're not familiar with Cliff and you're listening to the show, it's strange how you found us here. But Garden of Doom, that's sort of what you get there, a lot of variety, also some horror and pop culture. And, we'll do deep dives into gargoyles or dragons, but also maybe like a Marvel movie, or did a deep dive with science writer Matt Williams on Babylon 5, also one on the reboot of Battlestar Galactica. So there's something for everybody there. And Garden Views is its sister show on the same feed, because I'm cheap and I'm not going to buy 2 feeds. And Garden Views I found myself doing interviews with people on Garden of Doom, which I really felt like it wasn't really Garden of Doom territory. Like when I was talking to someone who was no longer part of the Church of Scientology, I didn't think that was really for Garden of Doom. When I was talking to someone about homeopathic medicine, I didn't really feel that was part of Garden of Doom. So I just created Garden Views for that. And then in real life, I'm a lawyer. So I realized I had all of these resources to me that were involved in niche areas that may want to talk about it. And lo and behold, they did. But it was sort of a trick. I had an ulterior motive. I wanted to try to extrapolate the laws of man and figure out what's going to happen in the laws of space. And in that path, an NFL agent came on the show and talked about that. The law firm who figured out how to successfully sue state sponsors of terrorism came on and talked about that. The lawyer who was actually the highest ranking officer in the aftermath of January 6th in Washington, D.C. for the National Guard, who actually made the decisions on when arms could be used, talked about the laws of armed conflict. But I also talked about people about maritime law, aviation law. I had a 2-star general who ran Dulles Airport. We talked about the airports and airspace and international and immigration attorneys about diplomatic status and NGOs. And from that, I parlayed that into yet another unpaying job. And I am now the general counsel and a member of the board of directors on the Space Court Foundation, which is a not-for-profit educational group that tries to place law students in internships with law firms or companies who deal with space law issues, and in their own way to try to nudge space law to reach the aspirations of sort of the Antarctica Treaty and the Treaty on the Use of Outer Space, which is for peaceful and scientific purposes only. And
well, that's really important, because that's what JFK was all about, wasn't it? He wanted so it'd be a non-war type area space, no war up there, no arguments. We need to work in space together because we don't know what's beyond it.
right. Well, you know what
Oh,
The
sorry, carry on.
alternative is not to throw your country under the bus, but the alternatives are the British East India Company or the Hudson Bay Company, where you have, government soldiers garrisoned on private company forts and vessels with governors who are quasi-military, quasi-civilian, but basically company executives. And that's the alternative. We know it already. We've seen it, and then it's the British aren't the first to do it. I mean, we do it we're doing it right now. I mean, NASA is SpaceX's biggest client. I mean, it's not the same thing yet, but it is on the path towards a slippery slope. So hopefully, and one of those things that everybody has to agree, and everybody has to not just aspirationally agree, but sign treaties and put something in it. Right now, there's something called the Hooks theory, which says everybody involved has to behave because they have more at stake here on terra firma than in space. I'm a cynic. My view is that as soon as they find something they can get to that's harvestable and can be used for profit here on Earth or on forward bases. There are rocks out there worth more than the GDP of the entire world. Now they're very, very far away, so the technology isn't there, but it will be. And when there's a profit, the technology gets there quicker. So before the math changes, the laws have to be in effect with some sort of teeth, some sort of escrow, some sort of insurance or reinsurance or bonds or something more serious. I don't know what that would be, but
I know.
luckily there's lots of smart people working on it.
Because that's like you say, it's very important, because if you don't have the laws there, then anything goes. It becomes like the Wild West in space. I forgot what they used to call it when it was all just you know that frontier where there was no law and anything goes. Well, we don't want that in
Lawless.
space.
Lawless. That's, I mean,
Yeah.
you have it exactly right. The Wild West. Yeah.
So it's brilliant that you're doing this kind of thing. Is this so? Is this like a voluntary group? This is, or is this actually backed by some kind of government kind of backing, or is it something people have to take seriously when it all comes to it?
No, it's a tax exempt, not for profit incorporation, incorporated in Pennsylvania. There's members of the board from all over the world, and everyone is a volunteer. Everyone pays their own way for anything that they're going to go to, including if they want to go to the space conference in Azerbaijan, which there's a shooting war there, so there's a lot of concern about that. Um, but yeah, it's volunteer. The money comes from donations, some grants. We're trying to work on a product that can be sold to trade groups, law firms, and companies that it's sort of like a prep kit to be involved in space law. But secret between you and me and your audience is that hopefully we're going to draw up the contracts to make them fair and reasonable without any loopholes or fine print that hurts the world. It
Yeah.
should help the world. And here's a secret: most people are lazy, and if there's a template contract for them, they'll sort of use the same one over and over again. Nobody wants to read 67 pages on the construction and insurance and transport of risk of loss on satellite parks. So that's part of it, but yeah, there's the only thing that might be government is some of the universities. There's 3 or 4 certified space program universities in North America. 3 are in the United States. One is McGill in Canada, and so there is work with them, but it's purely academic to the extent I can tell, and getting interns and things like that. But there's a moot court competition, and like 30 universities participate in it, and the judges are volunteer, everything, but not the facility. We have to pay rent on the moot courts at various locations. So
I think it's brilliant that you're doing this. We need this kind of thing. So, my blessings and prayers for all of you doing that kind of work, and continue it. Keep it going. Keep our space safe.
yeah, we're trying.
We're going to run out of time in a moment. So is there anything, anywhere you want to direct anybody to have you got a website or anything, or just straight to the podcasts?
Yeah, on the podcast, you can find it on Apple, Spreaker, Spotify, Podbean, wherever you like. If you have some unusual taste, you can find it on the Wrestling Soup Network. You can also find it on the PWC, full disclosure, I'm a 1/3 owner of the PWC. Fuller disclosure, we have never and probably will never be profitable, so don't worry about that. It's also on the Garden of Doom and Garden Views, also on the Hameen Media Group, if you're interested in that group as well. But it's all free. You can find it anywhere. There's a Facebook page, not a group, but but if somebody texts me or emails me or DMs me on Twitter, I'm at Icarus Fell MD. Icarus like the Daedalus and Icarus, Fell, and MD like Maryland MD. Twitter, I am happy to engage. My DMs are open. And if you're a real person, I will follow you back. If you're following 1,001 people and have three, and you're 3 followers of your own, I'm probably going to assume that you're like a porn bot or a gambling bot or something, and ignore you. But yeah, I just hope everyone tries the show. And like I said, if one episode isn't for you, there's going to be others that are. And I always tell people, you don't need to like me. You just have to trust me to take you someplace that you probably haven't been before.
Oh, wonderful, Jeff. And you've taken us places that many of my readers or viewers haven't been today. So thank you very much. And I look forward to doing more in the future, and have a great day out there.
You do the same, and everyone, please buy your tickets, virtual or in person, for the Nephilim Anthropology Conference, because that's how Debbie knows me, and that's how I know Debbie. And if you sell enough tickets, they may fly me into to Scotland, and I've never been to Scotland. I would really, really like to go, if not this year, next.
I feel the same way. I would like you to be there. Obviously, we need to get you there, whether it's this year or next year.
Right. So buy tickets, folks. The audience is literally for 8 billion people. You can buy virtual tickets.
I
If only 10% of that buys tickets, I'm going.
I normally put the link down there anyway to the events ticket for Knock On, as David keeps telling me, Knock On, Nephilim Anthropology Conference. So thank you, Jeff. And I'm going to end the show here and thank viewers for watching. If I can get it to stop.